Breakfast for dinner, anyone? And welcome back to Cliffieland. This is Weekend Country number 120 on our second attempt of cooking the food of every single country in the world. And tonight we're up to the food of Myanmar, aka Burma. Myanmar is located in Southeast Asia. It is bordered by Thailand, Laos, India, Bangladesh, and China. Its food is really delicious, and it is different in all different parts of the country because there are a lot of different ethnic groups in the country. But by and large, it is influenced largely by the cuisines of China, Thailand, and India, depending where you are. Food along the coast will feature a lot of seafood dishes involving fish and shrimp paste, and inland you'll find things involving a lot of pork or other land animals. Now, there are a lot of great dishes across Burma, aka Myanmar. We wound up being able to do it for more than one night last time, so let's take a look and see how things went when we tried things then. Well, 4 years ago on the Global Cooking Challenge, I had the benefit of being able to cook across 3 nights, and I did okay on 2 of those. The first night, though, not so much. The first night, I wound up making a pork curry, and I'm not showing you a picture of it yet because I have to tell you, I'm sure the recipe was just fine, but I totally destroyed it. I burnt it beyond recognition. It was one of the biggest fails in the history of the Global Cooking Adventure, and it's entirely my fault. That's what it looked like. You can point and laugh now. Now, as for the second night, things went a lot better. We did a coconut chicken curry, which was delicious. It was very nice, involved a lot of ingredients, but I liked it. Unfortunately, won't be able to do that one tonight. The third night is the one that we're doing tonight, and it's the most common dish across all of Myanmar, which is a Mohinga. A Mohinga is a noodle fish soup, which is actually eaten for breakfast. We're having it for dinner here. We used a specific recipe last time, and it came out rather nicely, despite a little screw up here and there, but I really enjoyed it. This time, though, I wanted to find a recipe that was probably a little more traditional, so we're changing that up a little bit. Now, a word about the recipe that we're using. Number 1, the recipe calls for the use of an entire, whole, cleaned, and gutted catfish. There's no way I was going to find a complete one of those here. Trust me, I tried. So we're using catfish fillets. You'll see that in the ingredients list in a moment. Also, a lot of recipes for Mohinga will involve a variety of different things. Some will use a banana stem or banana blossom. This recipe didn't call for that. Some will call for the use of shrimp paste. This one calls for fish sauce instead. Still, looks like we actually got pretty close to all the actual ingredients, so let's take a look and see what goes into tonight's dish. For our Mohinga, we'll need a half a cup of uncooked jasmine rice. Then for the broth, 3 quarts of water, 3 stalks of lemongrass cut into 3-inch pieces, 1 2-ounce piece of ginger unpeeled, sliced thickly crosswise into slabs, 5 bay leaves, 1½ teaspoons of ground black pepper, a half a teaspoon of ground white pepper, 2 teaspoons of salt, 1 scaled and gutted catfish, about 3 pounds. Here we're substituting 2 pounds of catfish fillets. Then for the soup, 1/3 of a cup of canola oil, 1 stalk of lemongrass minced, 1/4 cup of minced garlic, 3 tablespoons of minced ginger, 1 tablespoon of paprika, 1 teaspoon of turmeric, 2 red onions diced into 1/2-inch pieces, about 3½ cups worth, 1/4 cup of fish sauce, salt to taste, 10 ounces of fine round rice noodles, and then for serving, 6 hard-boiled eggs sliced, 12 yellow split pea crackers broken into pieces, a half a cup of chopped cilantro, 2 limes cut into wedges, and thinly sliced red onion. This may take all day to prep and probably involves every pot in the house, but it's time to get cooking.
Heat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Spread the rice across a rimmed baking pan. Bake, giving the pan an occasional stir until the rice is golden and aromatic, about 20 minutes. Cool the rice to room temperature, and then pulverize the rice in a spice grinder. Then start the broth. Select a large wide pot that will fit the catfish with room to spare. An 8-quart pot works well here. Then add the water, lemongrass, ginger, bay leaves, black pepper, white pepper, and salt, and bring to a boil. Lower the heat and simmer for 15 minutes. Then carefully lower the fish into the pot. If using a whole fish, the entire thing may not be completely covered in water, but that's okay. Bring the pot to a brisk simmer, Then lower the heat and cook gently for 15 minutes. Then, using tongs, carefully turn the fish over, or at least rotate it slightly to cook the side that was sticking out of the water. Simmer for another 5 minutes or until the fish flesh pulls away cleanly from the bone if using the whole fish. Then, using tongs and a spider or slotted spoon, lift the fish out of the broth and transfer it to a bowl. Turn off the heat and let the broth sit on the stove. If using a whole fish, when it is cool enough to handle, pull off the skin and discard. Separate the cooked fish from the bones, trying to keep the skeleton or the skeleton portions if the fish is cut in pieces intact. Set aside the cooked fish, return the skeleton including the head and tail to the pot, and then bring the pot to a boil. Lower the heat and simmer for 15 minutes. The broth should have a mild ginger lemongrass flavor and be slightly cloudy. Strain the broth through a fine mesh strainer. You will have about 10 cups. Give the pot a quick rinse when it is cool enough to handle, and then in a small bowl, place the powdered rice and a ladleful of the broth, and whisk it together until no lumps remain. Return the broth to the pot, and stir the rice mixture into the broth. Bring the broth to a simmer and cook, stirring often until it starts to barely thicken, about 5 minutes. Turn the heat to low and cook the broth at a gentle simmer while preparing the soup. Then start the soup. In a wok or large skillet, heat the oil over high heat and add the lemongrass, garlic, and ginger. This should be the spiced ginger here, not the unpeeled slabs as I've done. And stir fry for 1 minute. Then add the cooked fish, paprika, and turmeric, mashing the fish gently with a spoon to turn it into a coarse paste, and cook it for about 1 minute. If you see any errant bones, pick them out. Pour the contents of the wok into the broth and bring it back to a brisk simmer. Then add the red onions and fish sauce and simmer for 5 minutes more or until the flavors come together. Taste the broth. It should be on the salty side because the noodles will not have salt. If it is not that salty, add some salt or fish sauce. At this point, the soup can be cooled and served the next day. Then cook the noodles. Bring a pot of water to a boil and add the noodles. And cook, stirring often with tongs or chopsticks to prevent it from sticking for 5 to 6 minutes or until softened. Turn off the heat and let the noodles sit in the water for 3 minutes. Then drain in a colander and rinse the noodles under cool running water and shake the colander to remove the excess water. If not serving right away, mix some canola oil into the noodles with your hands to keep them from sticking together. You can also cook the noodles in advance and soak them in warm water before serving. Then to serve, divide the noodles among the bowls, ladle the soup over the noodles, and dress with the hard-boiled eggs, lime wedges, cilantro, crushed crackers, and red onion slices, and serve.
How did that turn out? Well, it was really delicious. It was much better than last time. It had really depth of flavor. I loved the Mohinga. I got the noodles just right. The flavors were really nice and balanced between the sweet, salty, umami, bitter, and sour. The bit of cilantro and lime on top was a nice pop, as well as the crunchy crisps on top, which were difficult to find but really worth finding. And it had really nice bit of heat from the ginger. I have to admit, I did screw up the ginger. I put the minced ginger where the whole ginger should be, which was a mistake on my part. But it really was nice, even though I did have floating big piece of ginger in the dish. It was so great, we all came back for seconds. Thankfully, we have leftovers for the next day, so it's gonna be really good. I'm gonna give the Mohinga from Myanmar 4 out of 5 globes. Probably would be a 5 if I had more experience with it, didn't screw up, and once those flavors really get a chance to really develop. So that does it for this little bit of Asia. We're gonna go back to Africa next week for the food of southwestern Africa and the food of the nation of Namibia. See you then. And remember, if you'd like to see our streams live when they happen, follow us on Periscope or Facebook Live. Like and subscribe to be advised when these videos are posted. If you have any thoughtful feelings or helpful suggestions about the food that we're cooking, sound off in the comments. Remember, links to the original recipes, remember these aren't my recipes, are found in the About section. And tune in next time. Thanks for watching and happy eating!